Hi, I'm Sue.
And I'm Lisa. We are retired teachers who each have taught over 30 years in elementary schools.
I started to write a book about all the funny things that happened to me as an educator, but I couldn't get anyone to read it. So my friend Lisa here, who is also hysterical, decided to share these stories together out loud.
And so was the birth of our podcast.
We didn't know
what we didn't know.
Sit back and enjoy. Hey, Lisa, how are you?
I'm doing great, thank you.
I was thinking about how naughty sometimes you and I were as teachers, and then I got to thinking, were you disciplined a lot in school or punished?
I was pretty quiet. I was kind of always a rule follower. However, I would partake in mischievous
behind the scenes.
I never was one of those kids that kind of got away with it and didn't get caught. Yeah. But there was a few times I had to stand with my nose in the corner.
And we've talked on the podcast about when I had to write Mr. Carr 500 times, and I popped a bag. That was like the worst thing I ever did.
Yeah, like popping a bag or something like that. I wouldn't have jumped on that if one of my students had did that. I'd be like, okay, that wasn't cool, and move on. But back then, when we were younger, those things were absolutely not tolerated. It was black and white. There was no gray.
Yes. When we walked in the hall, it never occurred to you to talk to somebody. You just didn't talk to anybody. And our parents, if they got the call from school or during conferences, I remember my dad going to conferences and coming back and I talked too much in class. Can you imagine?
No.
And the parents really, they took to heart what the teacher said. They would know if the teacher was a little over the top or a little crazy, but they didn't confront the school or the teacher. So I thought today would be really funny to talk about discipline.
Right. I always had trouble with the teacher that would be really calm and let you get away with it, and then all of a sudden just explode.
Yes.
At you.
So they would just
that was the hardest part.
I had a number of teachers who would do that. You think, this is a great teacher, and all of a sudden they're like going insane.
Yeah. So if you give me a wide berth,
give me a wide berth, baby.
I'm gonna go down the path a little bit, but pretty studious.
Some of the teachers really did squash your creativity. When we did Teachers Who Haunt Us, that was a while ago, some of those teachers were they were bad.
Yeah. I was really sad to hear my granddaughter, she just started kindergarten at a parochial school, and my granddaughter's one of those kids, she's very, very creative. So if there's a picture of a dog to color in, she's going to make a rainbow dog. Or she's going to draw wings on him, and she's outside the line.
Right.
And her teacher told her, you need to make your pictures look real. And I'm like, no, you don't need the brown dog. No, you keep drawing your rainbow and putting your hearts in the...
It's that brittle thinking that some of these teachers have. My brother-in-law is in his 80s, and he is colorblind, and so is my husband. And they got in trouble, like deeply in trouble, at a parochial school back in, what would that be, the 50s? Mm-hmm. He colored a little cutout bunny pink because he had no idea what color it was. And, it was a phone call home. And finally... they discovered that he was colorblind, and the teacher didn't even apologize for setting him in the hall and yelling at him in front of people. So I just was thinking about all the techniques that we use for discipline. Some were really bad, and I thought, let's name this. Ready? Drum roll, please. Sit down, shut up, and earn a marble.
I love it.
Our school had sparkles. And for those of you listening, maybe it works for you.
But. School discipline has really changed over the years. Mm-hmm. Like back in the day, if you got in trouble, the teacher didn't send you to the counselor.
Oh, no.
Well, they sent you straight to the paddle.
Bum, bum, bum.
And this even happened when I was teaching in Arizona in the late 80s.
Yeah.
And the principal there had a paddle, and the kids could choose. You could either call home, or you can take the paddle. So it wasn't archaic from way back then.
No, it really... the 80s is a little bad.
Okay, it is a little archaic now.
Which is weird to say, but to people who are our age.
Yeah.
But the paddle was like this weapon of mass intimidation.
Oh,
it was there to intimidate you into behaving. It didn't even need to be used.
No.
It just hung there, gleaming on the wall, daring you to make one wrong move.
And it wasn't just a paddle, it had its own personality. Teachers gave it names like Board of Education or the Equalizer, or my favorite, Old Hickory.
Oh, Old Hickory. That sounds like a Civil War general. I remember they'd actually have it engraved, or they'd take a marker and write on the paddle, Old Hickory. Mm-hmm.
And if the paddle wasn't enough, they had the good old dunce cap. That's before our time. Teachers literally made kids wear hats that screamed, I'm an idiot. Now today we could have just put a big L on their forehead, like,
Right.
loser.
Or why not just give them a t-shirt that said, I peaked in kindergarten. Sorry.
Oh, the corner punishment, like I said before. I had to stand one time with my nose to the corner.
Why did you have to do that? Just stand there, face the wall, think about what you did? What did you do, Lisa?
I probably talked.
Ooh. Like the wall's going to give you advice. Hey, Lisa, maybe stop talking in class, huh?
Yeah, well, if you are chewing gum, sit there with your gum on your nose. Yeah, chewing gum was like committing a federal crime.
Yeah.
If you so much as snapped a bubble, the teacher would make you scrape gum off the bottom of the desk for an hour. The punishment is like, well, let's be honest, it's like a biohazard.
Oh, can you imagine touching other people's gum?
But maybe that's what made us stronger. Why don't I don't get sick?
You know what? I haven't had a cold in like 5 years.
Some teachers were going to let kids have gum, and then some knucklehead would start putting them underneath the lunch trays. Do you remember the lunch trays?
Just a second.
Knucklehead.
Time out, knucklehead. I just want to... Oh.
Kids put gum underneath the lunch trays, and now nobody can chew gum under the tables.
I did have a rule that you could chew gum because as somebody with a lot of energy, it helps, and especially mint gum. Studies have proven that. But I did say if I find a piece of gum somewhere, we're done. But it was always reasonable. Yeah. We're not going to have gum the rest of the week now.
Yeah, I would just say you can have it in the classroom, but you got to spit it out as you leave the room.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, because other teachers would just go insane.
Another ridiculous discipline was making kids write lines of the action that they did wrong. I mean, I will not talk in class 500 times over and over again on the board. I'm sure it kept us quiet for a while, but all it did was give us forearms like Popeye. I am what I am.
And it's sort of like a badge of honor. Like, I'll write these lines.
I'm going to write that 500 times and make me hate writing. Yeah. Not only that, I'm allergic to chalk dust. So I would just
that is true. They make us write it on the chalkboard.
Yes.
Sometimes I had to write in my notebook. I wish I had kept those. Oh, well, while we're talking about ridiculous things like that, let's talk about dress codes. And back in our mom's day, they had to wear skirts. But they would have to kneel on the floor, and if their skirts didn't touch the floor, they'd have to go home. Kneeling, I mean, who came up with this? Are knees all that sexy, Lisa?
Knees are sexy.
Oh, I guess that's what it is then.
They're afraid. If your knees are showing, maybe... I don't know. Let's talk about wearing hats.
Oh, controversial, Lisa. Are you sure you want to open that can of...
Let's do it.
And then you had little girls that would come in wearing cat ear headbands and strange things like that.
Yeah, the little birthday ones with the little cake on top of the band. I think that was the purpose, to not have those, because it was distracting. But if you're going to let girls wear headbands, you probably should let boys or anyone wear a hat. I think that was the rationale.
It's kind of like that individuality that we wanted to have became points of discipline. It became like you were distracting from others, and the teacher would get mad about it. Agreed. Well, then let's not even talk about mohawks, purple mohawks.
The mullet that's coming around.
Okay, that's just wrong.
Business in the front, party in the back.
I think we're talking about individuality and the importance of that.
It was like my last year teaching. I always said, take off your hat. And the kids would respectfully look at me and go, okay. And they'd go take off the hat when they came in the room. That was just a thing. Leave your hat out in the hallway. And the kids never said a word to me. And one day I was in another teacher's room, and I'm like, why are all the kids, is there a hat day or something? Like, kids around the building are wearing hats. And she goes, the school board declared like 2 years ago that kids could wear hats in the classroom. And I'm like, missed that memo.
Let's talk about, we kind of mentioned this at the beginning when we were coming onto our podcast today, of these unhinged teachers.
Yeah, we all had that one teacher who's on the edge, the one who'd slam a ruler on the desk so hard your great-grandkids would feel it.
Oh, yeah. We had a teacher that would yell so loud, the birds outside on the power lines would fly away. She wasn't teaching math, Lisa. She was summoning the spirit world. It's just like, you could tell they were getting there. And the bad part, bad Sue, bad Lisa, we could tell when the teacher was getting that way, maybe.
Oh, yeah.
And you
had that little moment where you're like, should I push it beyond that point?
Yeah.
Or let her down,
This is where teacher training, people who think anybody can sub, this is where the fork in the road is.
Yeah.
This,
De-escalate.
Yeah, I had this choir teacher, and it was in a church setting, and he just was terrible with discipline. He knew music. He was great. But we would mess around in between songs, and we could see him escalating. All of a sudden, we were singing Pass It On. It only takes a spark, and we're just singing it. And all of a sudden, in the middle of it, he did the snap. He snapped. And he said, I'm out of here. And he left. I'm a volunteer. I don't need to take this.
Do you remember that old Cheech and Chong skit? The reason I know this is because my sister had one of those little 45 albums. It was Cheech and Chong's Sister Mary Elephant. And the sub was this nun, and she'd come in, and the class was unruly because it was 70s, and they were like swearing, and knives, you hear like a knife in the wall. And she'd be like, class, 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 shut up! Thank you.
Thank you.
And they would be quiet for like 20 seconds, and then they would start right back up again. Compare kind of the discipline that we had as kids and then today. Sadly, some of those things still are being used. And I think that sometimes when people get stressed, they resort back to what they had when they were kids. So you still see some of those, probably
absolutely.
not the dunce cap, but there are still probably maybe a few people that make kids right. So fast forward to today, I know discipline is all about like restorative practices. Let's sit in a circle and talk about why you threw that chair, Bobby. Where are you feeling frustrated?
Yeah, and frustrated that gravity exists.
What drives me crazy is asking the kids when they do something wrong, they misbehave. You're like, why did you do that? Well, they don't know. They can't explain that because they, at the time,
They really
wanted
don't know.
to do it.
And a lot of times with the ADHD kids, which is a true medical diagnosis, they don't have the tools to change this behavior. And we can't just say, stop it.
Yeah, right. I remember that one teacher had one of my students in the hall, and she kept going, were you below the line? Were you below the line? And she got right in his face.
Yeah.
Were you below the line? Were you below the line? And I could just see his hands balling up. I'm like, he's going to explode. He's like,
punch her
because he didn't know. He couldn't explain that. So I'm all about, though, talking through things and giving them those tools and how to explain their feelings. And I think that's really important. But in the heat of the moment, they're not going to be able to.
You need empathy.
Yeah.
But not too much kumbaya, man.
Now, instead of writing lines, kids do these mindfulness exercises. I'm all about SEL and social emotional learning and mindfulness, but it's ironic because the teacher's the one who needs the deep breathing a lot of times.
We're going to do some meditation now. Be quiet. So, we didn't have mindfulness. We just heard Mrs. Jenkins shouting at us, sit down in silence and you're going to like it. Yeah. You want to sit down with a smile.
And you still hear that. If the kids were bad enough, you had to send them to the principal. And you know what that meant, Sue.
Well, it depends what the principal's style was.
Right.
One of our principals had a style that meant you're just going to get chewed out.
Coming to Jesus meeting.
Coming to Jesus.
Put the fear of God into them.
And I will not see you in this office again.
But you know what? Kids towed the line because they didn't want to be sent to the principal. I've had other principals that were like, kumbaya.
Yeah, they'd just say, you know what? They'd come back with like a candy bar.
Yeah.
The kid's like, what? I want to get in trouble and get a candy bar.
I'm sending the principal to get chewed out. And no, they come back with rewards.
But the ultimate with the kumbaya principal was they'd start an anxiety group with the counselor. The school counselor would be like, well, we're going to meet and talk about your anxiety. And then they'd miss math. And then you would be full of anxiety for missing math, which...
Group shaming was next level. I mean, one kid would act up and the whole class would pay the price. I hated that so much when you're a kid. You're like, what did I do? Why am I being punished, So teacher would be like, all right, everybody, since Timmy couldn't stop talking, no recess for anyone.
I know, and recess was our lifeline. It's what kept us going.
Big
The
time
light
day.
at the end of the tunnel. Losing it was like canceling happy hour.
Yeah. And then worse, everyone now hated Timmy. You'd see the kid side-eyeing him during math class, whispering, Timmy, Timmy, if I can't go down the slide today, we're taking you down instead.
Exactly. Group shaming. Just terrible.
Oh my God, I have to tell a story. can I tell the Sue story?
Which one?
The group shaming Sue story.
Oh, well, okay, but before you do, I want to say this. Principals were teachers, and they treated us like they're bad little children sometimes.
Yeah.
And there were some group meetings, and this was an example, and all I wanted to do was eat lunch. Go ahead. Lisa.
So all of a sudden, the principal called in the 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade teachers. It was this wing of teachers. And he had a special meeting, brought us into the office.
During lunch.
I know. You have a right to have your...
I don't miss meals, Lisa. I don't miss meals. Ever. Continue.
So
You may continue.
Okay. So anyway, we get put in this meeting, and we're like, what is this all about? Nobody knew. And all of a sudden, he just started hammering us, just yelling at us and just berating us for, I don't know how people were acting or whatever in the hallway, or the negative tone in the hallway. I'm not sure exactly what it was.
No, that's the point. We didn't even know.
We didn't even know, because he didn't clarify that. He just started screaming at us, you ready to work together? He's just totally hammering us. And Sue, you're sitting there in the corner with your legs stretched out and crossed.
Yeah.
And then sitting slouching way
Because
back
I
in
have
your chair
scoliosis. Uh-huh.
with one of those orange push-ups
Well,
that they gave at lunch.
Let's be fair. I had bought a lunch, and I was looking forward to it. It was a good lunch, and they had a dessert that day. The dessert was this triangle popsicle that you'd push up. It was a Minute Maid orange popsicle. They were triangular.
Yes. So you're like...
It was melting. It was literally
the whole
melting.
time. And you could see him getting angrier and angrier. And we're sitting there going, what is this even about? Like, honestly, we had no idea what this about. And then we're like, is it me? I don't think I did. And you're starting to question your own...
Yeah, called... Do you know that's called gaslighting?
Wait a minute here. And so then... You're just slurping.
I had to, Lisa. It was melting. I've already said this. It was melting. I had purchased this lunch.
Wait, that just made the room even more tense, but it was so funny. And I'm trying not to laugh at your slurping.
Oh, it threw him off all right. That brought me much
We get out of the
pleasure.
meeting, and then he goes, I want to see 5th grade back in here. And we're like, oh, great. Now we're going to get chewed out individually. I guess it was us.
Yeah.
And he goes, just want you to know, you're all good. This wasn't meant for you. And I'm like, why did we just get chewed out for like a half an hour?
But that's where the gaslighting continues, because I believe he may have said that to each grade. So everybody thinks, and then you're angry at the other grade. 5th grade did it. That's a very good teacher tactic.
And don't talk about it.
No,
don't
don't ever talk about it. I won't talk
about it. We do not want any conversation in the parking lot.
Lisa, that was cleansing. Thanks for bringing that up. Then, of course, there was taking away recess from kids individually.
Yeah.
You'd be sitting at your desk watching your classmates run free, because you could see them out the window, and you were inside writing, I will not pass notes in class. I will not pass notes in class.
Yeah. I never understood taking away recess, because those are the kids that really need to go run around.
Recess.
But it's ironic, because that punishment just made us better writers.
Yeah. You have handwriting. Your handwriting's nice, Lisa.
By 5th grade, I had a signature as fancy as the Declaration of Independence, like John Hancock.
Yeah.
Woo!
You can always tell the naughty kids by their nice handwriting. That's not true. The opposite. But the other thing,
cursive.
They would always use the recess to finish your work. And there was this one teacher that we had a long time ago. A kid had supposedly kicked another kid, so he has to lose recess for that. And he got a box from the cupboard, and he put it on the floor, and he goes, kick it. Kick it. He said, kick it. Kick it. Don't stop kicking it. And he made the kid kick the box the entire recess. He says, if you like kicking so much, kick this box. He made him kick the box for 20 minutes.
That's what, overcorrection? Yeah. Name on the boards?
Oh, yeah. How about, who remembers the ultimate public shaming? Lisa, go put your name on the board.
Oh, yeah, that was a power move. Your teacher would walk over to the chalkboard and slowly, like a villain in the Western, wee, 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 and write your name in huge letters. Or sometimes they would make you do the walk of shame. Go put your name on the board. And you kind of slouch your head down, your arms dragging out the sides, and you walk up and put your name on the board.
And then when you mess up again, you put a check mark next to it. You might as well have a sign, a neon sign flashing. This kid sucks. This kid sucks. Everybody walking by the door would say, Lisa has a check mark. Lisa has a check mark.
Yeah, and let's not forget the horror of the 3 check marks. What happened after 3? Nobody knew. But it was like unlocking the final level of a video game.
And you get to the boss fight, and you're like, I don't know. Yeah.
You got this kid's name, Sue, 25 check marks.
You don't even know. After a while, you're like, after 30, I'm going to kill you. Or
You know,
something.
some kids it really helped kind of control their behavior, but once you've got some checks, you're like, oh, well, it's kind of like with the diet. You know, you're on a diet and you're like, I'm not going to eat that. And then you have that one slice of pizza. You're like, well, the day's shot. I might as well just keep eating.
I'll keep getting check marks.
Yeah, I might as well keep. You know, we had majors and minors. And I had this little girl. Oh, she was adorable. And she was just always this wide-eyed, sweet little girl. And I gave her first minor ever.
It's an ODR for those of you in the know.
And she got a minor for, I can't remember even what it was. It was nothing, big deal. And she literally had a nervous breakdown. She could not handle it.
No.
She could not stop crying. And then they went out to recess and she came back and I tried to talk to her. I'm like, really? It's just a reminder. Don't be doing this.
Yeah.
And pretty soon she's like, I gotta call my mom. And I'm like, oh my God, the day was shot. I'm like, you're not going home because you got a minor. When some teachers made minors rain, you know, like, you go, like, make it rain.
But they would check our PIBIS. If your PIBIS, what does that stand for? We have an acronym one that we just did. If they check your PIBIS and you weren't given enough ODRs, you were in trouble.
You were in trouble.
I was kind of known as the midline PIBIS person, but I didn't give as many. It was usually really obvious. If somebody did something that was a major infraction, you just said, there you go.
Yeah, like and stealing something from somebody's. You're like, okay, now I gotta give one. But I hardly ever gave them. But yeah, this poor little girl, it ruined her life.
But then the opposite would be true of the...
Oh yeah, those whole group incentives. Like the marble jar. Every time the class was good, a marble in the jar. Sounds sweet, right?
Except then that one kid would ruin it. The teacher would be like, you're one marble away from a pizza party. And then Jake, stupid Jake, he spit a spitball. Oh no, it looks like we have to dump out the whole jar. Yeah, thanks, Jake.
Yeah, and the mean teachers would stand there and go, what? And they'd pour out all the marbles out of the jar, like, starting from the beginning again.
Well, they'd have like the word recess in letters, and then when you push them up, and again, that's kind of the style that I use.
Yeah, like you'd have mystery letters, kind of like Wheel of Fortune, is it Wheel of Fortune where Hannah, like, oh, what's it called?
Wheel of Fortune.
Yeah, Wheel of Fortune, where they
Vanna
White, isn't that her? Vanna White.
Vanna. Wow.
Turn a letter.
It's only been around about 35 years.
I know.
Okay.
Well, anyway, I hate those shows.
I do
I'm
too.
so bad at them. It could be literally one letter left, and I'm like, what is it? What is it? So it would spell like an incentive, and then if they were all, if you walk
Pizza
really well
party.
to the MAPE, which is Music Art by Ed, then you get to turn over a letter, kind of thing like that.
I'm sorry, you all were great, but Jake, you were allowed no letter. Public shaming.
Forget Jake.
Let's forget about Jake.
Let's talk about the teacher. If the teacher was in a mood, that jar wasn't getting filled no matter what we did. And we could have solved world hunger and world peace. Yeah. And they'd be like, I'll give you a half a marble.
Oh, yeah.
I'll give you half a marble. Forget
and
it. We don't even have marbles, so you get none.
You get none. Remember back when, well, I don't know if you remember this, having, what is it called? When you got your period, what's that called?
Menstruation.
Give out you when you had PMS. That's another acronym.
That's the problem with turning our age. You know that thing? It goes around your neck. And you usually put it on, it ties, and it's when you're cooking. Yeah, apron, that's what it is.
So, no, PMS. If you had PMS, you'd be like, there are no circles. And the kids, I think they kind of got in sync with your cycle. You're like,
no marbles today.
Mrs. S, the marbles for the third week of each month. No sparkles. I know I'm being sexist, Lisa, but it's okay for a woman to say this, just not a man.
You know what? Did you know I never did a marble jar or any of those things?
No, I there were occasions when we tried to spell something because they were really bad at assembly behavior.
Yeah.
So we would spell assembly or something and they would say ass on the board. Ass. That's for the longest time. So I'm like, let's stop. Let's ass. Because they're trying, like when you spell assembly, Emily will get an extra recess.
Yeah.
You would try things like that. Just like overall, we'll know. We'll decide.
Somebody, for the love of God, can somebody please get the next letter?
Assy, awesome. I don't know.
Yeah. Oh, the old token economics.
Yeah. So the token economics, if you behaved, you get fake money. And we talked about our Schwebert bucks and our Johnson bucks. And we made it, I think, a little less about behavior.
It wasn't behavior at all.
It was more about just... Yeah,
it was like, about work. If they had their homework in, then they got a Johnson buck.
But back in the day, it was like Monopoly for the morally upright.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. But heaven help you if you didn't earn enough to buy that pencil or eraser from the class store. Sorry, Jimmy, no snacks for you today. Should have thought about that before you forgot to raise your hand.
Honestly, token economics were just early training for capitalism and right-wing politics. But by the time we were 12, we were saving for retirement. Or at least that pack of Skittles. I'm going to get that pack of... Now, when I taught first grade, I did have token economics, because that really... The younger the child... Because we've talked about intrinsic versus extrinsic. And the younger you are, the more extrinsic will work. So I understand kindergartens with the sparkle jar or whatever.
But, that whole group discipline overall, like looking back... So much discipline was about controlling the herd.
The herd of animals.
It's like herding a group of cats or something.
Yeah, they say that.
It wasn't about teaching us morals. It was about crowd control, basically.
Exactly. Teachers didn't want respect. They wanted silence. It almost, honestly, thinking back to our time in school, it was like, I don't care if you learn math, just stop throwing crayons at each other.
And it worked, kind of. But it also gave us enough stories for a lifetime. I just think that if we look back to our younger days, and hopefully our students weren't looking back to those days, you're like, what was the point? I mean, you cannot rule with an iron fist. It doesn't last. It's not sustainable. The kids aren't going to respect it because they're not bought into it. They're not invested. They haven't had any control over the decisions that were being made. It was like... black and white.
It's happening to you, not with you.
Exactly.
And I think the number one thing is good parenting is obvious. It doesn't really matter if you come from a family with a single parent or whatever. If they had good discipline at home, it was great. Yeah. If they didn't, it was not good. And I'm not blaming the parents or shaming them, but I'm just saying that follow through and that consistency, because we could talk about paying kids for grades and things like that. I
just really think that I've told student teachers this too, like if kids truly know you care about them, and they are the best bullshit detectors in the world. Really? If they know that you really care about them, you show up to their games or their recitals and you really show that you're invested in working with them that year, they don't misbehave. Right. And you have to create that atmosphere in the beginning of the year. I did a lot of team building. I didn't have to discipline, but just going, come on, guys, get it together. That was fine. I never had to yell. I just look at them and go, really? And then they kind of pulled it together because they respected and we had that good relationship.
Well, I think sharing bits of yourself, sharing bits of your family. And
becoming like a family. I think that's my best advice for anybody in teaching. Take the time to really get to know them, and you won't have to be using marble jars, and you won't have to clip up, clip down a name on the board, or get to the point where all of a sudden you just can't handle it anymore and you just explode like this blasting volcano.
And then you quit teaching.
Yeah. The kids are horrible.
And go back to our...
kids aren't horrible. It's usually your bad management is what is making...
Well, and go back to teaching styles. That's one of our episodes from quite a long time ago, and listen to that one.
At the end of the day, discipline has come a long ways. The old ways left a mark.
Well, if not on our egos, on our butts.
That's true. Did you ever get spanked?
No.
I got spanked once by my second grade teacher, and it was for spilling milk.
That's the thing.
That's ridiculous.
It's not usually...
And if nothing else, they taught us one thing. Don't mess with the marble jar. RJ, definitely don't mess with Jake.
Yes.
You know what? We'd love to hear from you. What is the most ridiculous discipline tactic you remember? Anyone have their name on the board with 2 check marks?
Ooh, what happens?
Recess for something you didn't even do?
What happens when you get that third check?
Yeah.
Did you ever tank the marble jar, maybe on purpose? Is the entire class from your back in the day ready to vote you off the island?
Ooh, Sue.
The tribe has spoken.
We did that? We would secretly vote teachers off the island.
Ooh, we did.
We'd call it like teacher survival.
That's
and
Survivor,
we do something that, I know we talked a little about staff meetings in another podcast, but we were like, okay, they're off the island.
We would just say, so-and-so, you're
off the island.
And then we'd pretend to do the torch.
Yep. Off the
So
island.
don't get voted off your island, people. Well, thanks everybody for listening.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, love you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Have a good day, everyone.
Thanks for listening to our podcast. We didn't know what we didn't know. We'll see you next time.